Well, we've set up VirtualBox, Kali Linux, Windows 10, and if you had enough room, Windows 7 and or 8. Now I'm going to show you how to set up a virtual Android device. So if you want to try some mobile hacking, you'll have access to a legal virtual Android ISO, or a virtual machine in this case. We're going to download from androidx86.org an ISO file, just like a virtual disk file that we've had before, and that'll allow us to create a new Android device running in our VirtualBox environment. So come to android-x86.org/download, and then scroll down just a little bit, and you should be able to find some ISO files. And you can see we always have the latest ones here, or you can use a stable one, and you just want to find one of the ISO files. And I'm on a 64-bit machine, so I'll choose the 64-bit Android x86 6.0, and we'll download the x86 ISO file 64-bit. And that will take a few minutes to download again, depending on your connection speed. But then we will come over to a VirtualBox as soon as that download finishes and start working on the Android image. Once that Android ISO has completed downloading, I'm going to start a new virtual machine in Oracle VirtualBox Manager. I'm going to call this Android 6. And the type is going to be Linux. And then we're going to choose a Linux. We'll choose a Linux 2.6, 3.6, 4x, 64-bit. I think you can also choose other Linux 64-bit here as well, but this Linux 2, 3, or 4 should work. And we'll choose about 1 gig of RAM, not too bad for an Android device. And we'll use about 8 gig of hard drive space, that's not too bad. And we'll choose the same options as before, a VDI box image, dynamically allocated, called Android 6. And then just like we did when we built our Windows 10 image from that ISO file, we will come to the storage, and we're going to add the ISO file to the virtual disk drive. In this case, it found that downloaded disk, but I can also just go to Choose, come to my downloads, and there's my Android file. Click OK. And now let's start up our Android 6 device. And we are going to install Android x86 to the hard disk. So we can just run it without installation, but we want to install Android x86 to our hard disk. And there are just a few steps that we have to go through. Inside here, we're going to create and modify partitions. And our mouse won't work in here because this is just an old DOS style startup. So we're going to do OK. We don't want to use GPT. We will create a new primary partition, and the size is fine. It will be bootable, so let's click bootable. And then let's move over to write. Choose write. And yes, Y-E-S. And after we write and quit, it'll ask us to create a partition or choose the partition we want to install this on. So this is just like working with the hardware of a blank, empty Android device. So I'm going to hit OK. And we're going to choose an ext4 as our file system to format this drive. And we will format the partition, yes. And yes, we will install the bootloader grub. And finally, we will make the install system read-write, yes, with a Y. It'll take just a moment to get through the Android setup here. And now we can choose Run Android x86. Hit OK. And you see the familiar Android startup screen from Android 6 level devices. It'll take some time to get this up and running, but once it starts, you'll see an Android desktop. Well, if you ever owned a brand new Android device, we get a chance to see the setup process there. And because this is an Android tablet or a phone emulator, we'll actually have to click and drag to get that mouse. And you can use your keyboard if you want to. So you can use your left and right arrows and hit enter to skip anyway. And we're not going to copy anything over from another device. We'll say no thanks. And we'll skip creating a Google account unless you just want to input your information in here. Then use your left and right arrows if you need to. Skip. And we'll say not now. You can turn on or off any of these things that you want to. We'll scroll down to the bottom and then we'll choose next. And you should see a welcome screen like this one. And if you get tired of clicking and dragging the mouse around, then you can just come up here to Input and deselect the mouse integration. So when we click on this screen now, we'll actually take over that pointer in Android. And if you want to stop doing that, you just hit your host key again, which is your left control or left alt or your left command key on my Mac right here. And you can always see what your host key is, of course, back when you are setting up your devices. But mouse integration, just turn that off. And then when I click inside the window, that is the real Android mouse. So if I want to see all my applications, I have them here, settings. And while we're in Android, I'm going to show you one quick little cool thing. If you want to become an Android developer and be able to run your own apps, you just click on About Tablet under Settings and find Build and click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do you see this? We're one step away from being a developer. 7. Now we have developer access. And if we go back to About the Tablet, you'll see developer options turned on. So now we can turn on a USB debugging. We can connect to another computer. So just a little something cool if you haven't done that on your Android device before. But then we can go back and we can always use our 3 buttons down at the bottom. We can use this to go back home. We can use this to see what apps are open right now. So I've got my account set up still out there. I'll just close that by sliding it off the side. I'm going to come back to my desktop. I've even got a browser. Wow, we can even surf the web. So I just picked a random book here. I hear this is a pretty good one. It'll teach your kids to code. So you can see we have a fully functional Android device running virtually on our local computer. So we're going to do one more exercise next, and then we'll begin some of our ethical hacking exercises using these virtual machines.